Do a video on the Module 1 Development of Practical Skills that will be assessed in your exam. So some of the key things that they'll be looking for is, do you know how to design an investigation? And do you know that there are three key variables that you must fully consider? The independent variable, the dependent variable, and your control variables. Now, this can either be that they ask you to plan the investigation yourself by writing a method that will cover these variables, or it could be that they give you a setup of an investigation and they want you to identify the variables. So things like if we were to change the concentration of a substrate, hydrogen peroxide in this specific example, we would therefore say that that's the independent variable and we want to at least give 5 appropriate values. We would be looking at the dependent variable. Well, we know hydrogen peroxide can be broken down by catalase. The catalase therefore is going to hydrolyze the hydrogen peroxide. We could measure the volume of gas, oxygen, that is being released. So the key thing to note when we are looking at rate, we always want to talk about the volume of a substance collected in a fixed length of time. So again, be specific, over 1 minute. Now the control variables would be every other variable that must be kept constant so that they do not influence the results. And whatever example they give you, there will be hints where they haven't told you. For example, what was the volume of the hydrogen peroxide? What was the mass of the liver cell sample? Was there any leakages that occurred in the apparatus setup? So it is important that you take your time with these practical skills. Now, the other thing you need to do is select the right equipment for being able to carry out an experimental design and ensuring that you have accurate results, that your precision and reliability of your results is not affected. So you need to be able to consider your uncertainty, which is that margin of error. Now, they're always going to be assessing you on this, and it could be looking at, do you know that if you're using, for example, a ruler, that you should know that there is a plus or minus half the smallest division. So in this case, we have 11 millimeters. My uncertainty is plus or minus 1 millimeters. So what I'm saying is it's 11 millimeters, but it could actually be 10, or it could actually be 12, sorry. The other thing to note is there's other things like digital devices. Now, the margin of error is always plus or minus the resolution of the apparatus. So I have my scales here, my balance, and I can see that I have zeroed the balance. Always tear your equipment to begin with to start so that there is no other factors affecting the results that you are collecting. And then that resolution is the smallest difference in mass. Now, if you look at my two examples, I have got one which gives it to no decimal point, so we have 5 grams, or I have one which is 5.3 to 0.1 of a gram. So it's important to note that your digital device and that margin of error is dependent on the reading that is given by that device, and that will either be given to you in information or it could be in a table of results. So how do we present our data in a table format? Well, all your raw data should be shown in a single table with ruled lines and a border. Use a ruler. You'd be surprised how many students lose marking points by not using a ruler. Your independent variable with units should go on your left column, and then your dependent variable with units should go in the right column. Any process data should go at the far right side. So it's important that you note temperature with units, volume of oxygen with units in 5 minutes. I've given some extra bits of information. And then my process data is at my mean, my rate, my standard deviation. So the raw data should always be to the same number of decimal places. And that is appropriate to the resolution of the measuring device. So again, this is a skill that they could be assessing you. Do you know how to work out how many significant figures? Check the question. The question will either state it or they'll expect you to know that processed data can be one decimal place or one significant figure more than the raw data. So it's important that you note when you're looking at significant figures, how many should you be using? Well, that is dependent on the data you have collected. And now we present it in a graphical form. Are we going to present it in a bar chart? Are you going to present it in a histogram? Do you know how to do that? Do you present it in a line graph? When do you select which of the graphs that you're going to present in? Do you know that your x-axis should always be your independent variable? Do you know your y-axis should be your dependent variable? And what's differing is whether or not we have a non-numerical independent variable or an independent variable which is numerical with regards to the histogram, for example. Do you know when and why to use a logarithmic scale? These are all skills that they will be assessing you in that exam paper. Do you know how to do your serial dilutions, or do you know how to work back from serial dilutions? Do you know about statistical tests? Which statistical test are you going to decide to use for the data that they've given you? Do you know how to calculate your degrees of freedom? Do you know how to identify the critical value? Can you conclude whether to reject the null hypothesis or whether you are going to have not enough evidence to reject the null hypothesis? And when it comes to evaluation skills, do you actually know how to use the information that's been given to you, whether it's in that method, whether it's in a table of results, or whether it's in graph format? Do you know how to pull the information out? Do you know what to look for? So if you are unsure on any of these skills that they will be assessing, why not buy my revision guide, which I have got on my website, which is specific to your exam board and specific to the skills that they'll be assessing. Or if you're still looking for something else that you can do, why not come to my 2-day revision course, intensive 2 days covering all 3 papers, the course content and the skills that you'll be required to display in that exam. And also, if you like the videos that I'm producing, then please do click on the like button and subscribe to my channel.